Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of What's the Crack with Your Nervous
Nervous
System?
system,
Hunch.
big
So,
topic.
big topic, yeah. And look, we had a nervous system workshop recently, and it's a 90-minute workshop, and we went way over time, as always. But
Nothing
this
new
was
there.
nothing new there, but also this was a workshop that I think like we really could have done like double the time. Like there's so much to talk about in
Oh my God,
in the
you could
nervous
do a
system,
year's course on the nervous system, honestly. There's
for
so
sure.
much. It's
Yeah.
trying to condense it all down. And I think, obviously, technically, we go into a lot of it in the workshop, but I think we should maybe talk a wee tiny bit because this is, I think, what helped me. Because I know for a long time, whenever me and you were talking about it, and you were giving it all the terminology, and I was like, right, okay, my brain just couldn't compute the terminology, but I knew what each meant. So I think if we even just start with my very simplistic explanation is basically
It's
there's
simple, it's good.
there's a ladder, a
There's a ladder.
polyvagal. It's a polyvagal ladder. It has three rungs on it. The top one is the very fancy name ventral vagal. Then we have sympathetic, and then we have dorsal. They each are different states that we find ourselves in. So the top one is the ventral vagal, which think of it as being calm, safe, relaxed. They all have a reason why they exist, and they all are there to keep us safe. None is better than the other. But we do move throughout them, and it's really good to know what we're doing, how we're behaving in each one, and if it's serving us. So the next one is sympathetic, which is very much your fight or flight, on the go, mobilization of energy. And then your last one is your dorsal state, which is very much your numbing out, your collapse, your heavier sort of energy. And in order to get back from dorsal up to ventral vagal, are you impressed? Are you impressed?
You're flying it. You know all the leather inside
You
out and
have
upside
to
down.
move, you have to work out how to move up. And then there's a wee bit of nuance because there's also blended states,
Yes.
which means that it's just not simply three. You can be in other states in a positive way as well. So I think starting off with that to help people know that there is a ladder, there is three states, and we're going to talk about then, you know, how this impacts our eating and how it's even impacted our eating and why we've introduced it into our course because I think that's the key why we're bringing this work in because actually it's really impacted us, really
Mm-hmm.
impacted how we're sharing it as well, and it's such a big piece that you can't.
Mm.
I think we've weaved it in. We've definitely weaved it in so much in our work, but
Oh yeah.
we haven't the terminology for it.
Yeah. We were
Now we
we were
have, yes, yeah.
yeah, totally. I think that like we were even actually chatting about that in the hub in our group yesterday because we were talking about how it is weaved in lots of other ways. Just sometimes there can be different language. And as you said, the polyvagal ladder helps us better understand how we can move because it's a linear process. So you have to move up and down the ladder in a linear process. You don't skip any steps. And when you really understand this, it's actually really, really helpful because ultimately what our nervous system does is it governs essentially on the absolute like the bottom level, it governs what we all think, feel, say, and do. And that's what that all relates to, of course, our eating. Like what we do day to day.
Mhm.
That means our eating behaviors, our food choices, what we think about food, what we think about our body, that all originates in our nervous
In the
system.
nervous system, yeah.
So we got to understand the nervous system because it's going to impact all of these things. And like
Hmm.
people that are watching us, they want to know about how it might impact their eating behaviors, right?
Yeah.
So I think where we go from here then is we need to understand that one of the reasons, now again, there's lots of reasons. One of the reasons that you go from diet to diet to diet to diet and you have all of this energy starting a diet and then it doesn't work and you go to the next diet, you go to the next diet, on one simple level, and again, I'm really trying to make this simple. If you bring the same nervous system dysregulation and limiting beliefs and whatever else is going on in terms of energy and vibration in your system to the next plan, to the next plan, to the next plan, to the next plan, you will end up in the same place, right? Now,
Hmm.
put the restriction aside for 1 minute, because the restriction is another story on some level in terms of how it creates that threat in our system and how it activates our nervous system. But ultimately, we're bringing the same person to every single approach that we take on, and then we blame ourselves
Yeah.
that like we're somehow, do you know what I mean? That we've gotten it wrong or that we've done it wrong. But we're not understanding how our nervous system is wired. We're not understanding what beliefs we have that will dictate how we
Hmm.
eat and the food choices that we make, and etc. We're not understanding that, of course, on a very physiological, biological level, our system is wired to protect us. And if we're not eating enough, there is going to be
Mhm.
backlash. If
And we
we're
can't
not,
think ourselves out of this because, when we go into more dysregulated states, we know the thinking part, the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, literally is inaccessible for the most part. So we have to embody it and work with it and understand it and regulate it then that our rational mind becomes more online.
well, this is why you can't really use CBT to lose weight. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or to make a diet work. Why you can't try to get all your thoughts right so that you will, lose weight and that the diet will work, because it's way more complicated than that. It's on a
Hmm.
on a deep nervous system beliefs
Hmm.
energy level. And if we don't do that work, then we're trying to bypass that. And we have a lovely picture, I think, or I suppose a metaphor in our hub, where it's a picture of a lovely tree, and we highlight that, like, the roots of this tree, like the roots of, and if we want to see the tree representing our relationship with food and our capacity to eat intuitively and engage in healthful behaviors for our health and well-being, if we look at this tree, we've got the roots, which is the nervous system and beliefs work. Then we maybe move up into the trunk a little bit, and we have our energy and vibration and what's going on there. And that's really, really
And our
fascinating work.
mindset.
You've been a big
Hmm.
fan of Joe Dispenza and other people that are experts in this field for many years, as have I, and done a lot of work in this area as well. And I think that understanding how that actually impacts us day to day is massive. And then we
Massive.
massive. Then as we move up the trunk of the tree, we come to like the branches and out into the leaves. And that's where behavior change occurs. That's where we look at the intuitive eating principles. That's where we look at healthful behaviors, the things that we do day to day. And I suppose where people make the mistake, and so this is not to self blame. Don't use this as a reason to beat yourself
Beat
over the
yourself
head with a
up.
stick. Yeah, but where most people do get it wrong is they go straight to try to change the behavior. They
Yeah.
go straight to wanting, well, if I could just change my food, if I could just stop eating the sugar, if I could just not have the sugar in the house. We're trying to go straight to the behavior without understanding the
The nervous
roots, what's
system and the
actually,
roots.
yeah,
Hmm.
and that's where,
And I think even if we look at the nerve, and if we think practically, well, what does that look like? So we talked about even the three different states, and then we have the blended states, which obviously, this is the simplistic 20-minute what's the crack
yeah,
with. We're trying to
break this
squeeze it
right down for
in.
you.
So what you need to understand is that when we're in each of these different states, well, then what might that look like? So if you think of, the start with dorsal. So dorsal is the lower, heavier energy, nearly the collapse, the inability to move sort of thing. And in that state, when the body, and this is all for protection as well, there's a reason why you might find yourself here. But in this state, then that's where, binging, sedation, eating in a way that you're disconnecting, you're numb, all of that in that nervous system state, that's where the majority of that eating takes place. So I think it's so useful to know that when my nervous system goes here, this is the behavior then that is linked. And
Totally,
when
and you've no energy. You've
you've
no
no
energy in that
energy.
place to
Yeah,
you're not going to put a full meal together with like 15 ingredients and have the capacity
yeah.
to actually create a nourishing meal for yourself. So you are going to be more likely to reach for something that requires zero brain
Mhm.
work, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And you're not going to
and
be
that
thinking of satisfaction. You're not going to be thinking of how pleasurable this is because in this state, then that energy doesn't care. It's not
and you
where,
can't even access you potentially can't even access
yeah.
satisfaction in that place because you're quite low and your energy is
Hmm.
low, your motivation is low. If you can imagine, your kind of system feels very shut down,
Hmm.
and exhausted. And like, how many people are in this state now? Again, we can
Hmm.
move in and out of this state throughout the day even, but for some of us, we
You're
might be in this
stuck.
state for quite some time. We might be stuck in this
Hmm.
state. Um and like, if you're, imagine being stuck in this state and then somebody tell you, now for the next 10 days you're going to follow this meal plan and you're going to create these lovely meals and lovely snacks and da, da, da. Can you imagine how that would actually further shut you down, where your system is like, no,
No
no.
way. And that's
But
why
if
part of your mind, you might think, I would like to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, but you just can't. You don't have the energy available. It feels overwhelmingly heavy in the body to be able to do that. Insurmountable, actually, I would say, as well. And then the middle state, then, if we look at sympathetic, That's the fight, the flight. And I would identify lots with that one. And that's
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're so much on the go, you're running from the bear, you're keeping going that you don't have the time. Your nervous system thinks you don't have the time to think about food, to cook food, you're just eat and grab on the go, 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 go. So then your choices, you're not even giving thought to your choices. You're just literally trying to survive the moment, the day. And
Yeah.
I would say that personally for me, that's where I've had the biggest shift is in this that realization.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the place where, you're often running on like that high energy, and in order to keep going, you're like, it's the quick fix. It might be the sugar, the caffeine. It might,
Hmm.
like you said, there probably won't be much space to have much thought about what it is that
Hmm.
you would actually like. You might be quite disconnected actually from your hunger. So you might go long periods without eating and then find
Hmm.
yourself a bit ravenous and
Starving.
like starving. And like I know from talking to you down through the years, like when you'd have these periods where it would be go, 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 and you probably were in maybe a sympathetic state. And like you could have gone hours and hours sometimes without eating, and
Hmm.
or having lunch with you, and you just motor on through, which is it's kind of funny how we are all so
Yeah.
different because
Or
like
you'd be standing cooking, and I'd be
like
like, I
this,
didn't got time to
get it
go
over.
shopping. I'm like, I haven't got time to shop for ingredients and cook. What are you doing?
What are you doing? But then it's funny because my brain then would shut off other areas in life, right? When I'm in that stressed
Yeah.
state. So
Uh-huh.
it shows up so differently for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's really about knowing that each of those states, as you said, they all serve a purpose. They're all protective states, so they're not bad. But our eating is going to look different in each of those states because our mind, our thoughts are different in each of those
Yeah.
states. Our energy, um, is different in each of those states, and how we view the world and ourselves is going to be really, really
Hmm.
different. So then, as you mentioned, that there's the rungs of the ladder, and at the top of the ladder, where we have our ventral vagal state, that place, as you said, where you're quite connected, it feels a bit relaxed, you feel together, grounded. Like you can imagine when we're in
Yeah.
that place, our eating is going to look very different than when we're in that activated or shut down place. And so that makes complete sense because number one, we have access to our thinking brain. We have access to our rational mind in that ventral vagal place where we can take a
Hmm.
pause, we can think things through, we can ask ourselves questions like, what would I really like to eat actually? What would feel good in this moment? What I'd like to make later on today. You like have
Yeah.
time and space
Yeah.
to think about these things, and it doesn't not from a place of like overwhelm and stress, like food stress, like, oh, well, that's more in
And
your
I think for
sympathetic
me,
energy.
I know COVID was a different experience for lots of different people, but for me, COVID allowed me to slow down, stay at home and not be out, working or going as much as I normally would. And for me, when I look back at that now, knowing what I know about nervous system, I'm like, oh, you totally let me get into ventral vagal. Now I know that wasn't the case for everybody. And with
Yeah.
that came the let's have energy to think about food, to think, well, what three meals we're going to plan and cook today, and how am I going to move my body today? And I remember coming out of that feeling so healthy, to be honest, and so well and so fit. And then along comes the running, the back into the rat race, if you like, the go, go, go. And very
Yeah.
quickly, those healthy habits that those behaviors that serve you well, it was difficult then to maintain those because then you're back into sympathetic. So
Hmm.
I find the challenge for me in the recent months has really been, okay, how can you get into ventral and have that relationship with food and ventral and shift out of that by still managing everything that's been going on, and with the awareness of the nervous system, to be honest, I definitely noticed the difference in my behaviors, in my health. As you know, I mean, I've had massive shifts in my own health, and different things, and even on how I feel, and even my fitness, because I haven't been
Yeah.
able to run for so long, and now back training, and it's all 100% to do with nervous system, and then the healthy habits, and knowing this work. And that's why we're so passionate about saying this is how important understanding and knowing that this work is. It's because it's not because we don't know where we want to get to, or we don't know the behaviors that we need to be doing, but it's understanding the why we're finding them difficult. And when we're in ventral vagal, I feel now like that the body has released the energy to me to
Hmm.
even keep propelling these behaviors off training or off taking time to cook. And then it creates like a positive spin of, oh, I've got more energy from doing that, and it's giving me more energy. So you want to keep going. Now, that's not obviously to say you don't go in and out of because the other
Of
states,
course.
because that's part of it, but it's where you're living. I'm not living anymore in sympathetic.
in sympathetic, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the key, isn't it? Because
yeah,
we're not saying that your goal every day is to be like relaxed and grounded and everything's gonna be wonderful. Like
mm,
we're not talking about bypassing real life pressures, demands, stresses, because like
yeah,
that's normal. We all have
yeah,
those. It's about being able to map your nervous system
yeah.
and have the awareness of your own body, your own mind. Where's your mind gone? What are the thoughts that are here right now? From an energetic perspective, what are you feeling? What sensations are you noticing in your body? When you scan your body from your head to your toe,
Hmm.
what do you feel? What words would describe if an alien came down from Mars that had no idea about emotions or body like states or mood states? Like, how would you describe what you were experiencing in that moment to
Hmm.
an alien? And it's about being able to map your system so that you can notice when you are tipping into that place of dysregulation,
Hmm.
and that what it is that actually will help move you back out of it. And again, like, it's to normalize the states. They're not bad. They all exist for a reason. But most of us don't know what state we're in any
At
moment of the day
all.
at
Yeah.
all,
And
ever.
it's
We've no idea.
and I think as well, it's not about waiting until the danger passes because, for me, obviously there's circumstances going on in my life which are not passing, that you just have to live, and it's highly stressful. And and I know that from even speaking
Yeah.
to clients, it's the same, or even in our hub members, and even for example, say mummies of young children. That's really stressful. Like we know going back to school and the routines and the evenings so you're constantly could be pulled into sympathetic. So you can't wait till the kids grow up because a whole new set of stresses is going to come until you say, right, I'll be in ventral vagal more whenever it's about saying, okay, this stresses me out and, this puts me in sympathetic. And as a result of that, these are the behaviors that I do. How can I, despite this being in my environment and my situation, manage this and regulate myself in a way to then get the behaviors? So I think that's key as well.
Totally. That's where we work in our hub with members on our nervous system energy bank balance. We use the analogy of
Hmm.
the bank balance. We look at withdrawals and deposits so that we identify when we get up in the morning what's in our bank balance.
Hmm.
Maybe our bank balance is down because we've had a bad night's sleep. Maybe you've had a row
Hmm.
with one of your kids in the morning, so that took a big chunk out of your bank balance. How do you put some how do you put some deposits in throughout the day so that you don't find by 7 o'clock you're completely in shutdown and in dorsal state because you're so wiped, because you're in the red, you're in the in
Yeah.
you know you've gone into the, what's the
Deficit.
word, the
Into the
what,
red, into debt, into deficit.
deficit. I was like, what's the other word for when you're in red? Deficit. So the point is that we look at, and again, these are not the big things. We're not talking about going on a spa day. Like, we're not talking about,
Mhm.
like, taking big chunks out of your day. This is about being able to map your system day to day and
Mhm.
look at the small moments, because again, like, the small things are the big things, and it's
Yeah.
looking at the small wins throughout the day. It's about looking at those small deposits that might be like stepping outside, putting your feet in the grass, taking a deep
Mhm.
inhale breath. It might be calling a friend and connecting for a moment or two. Like, there's so many things that we can do every day that will increase that balance, so that hopefully by the evening, because
Mhm.
people tend to struggle most in the evenings with food. Like, it tends to be
Yeah.
the evening that most of the behaviors, the unwanted behaviors around food, show up for so many of us. Now, again, that can be as a result of a lot of different reasons,
Mhm.
but one of those reasons is nervous system deficit.
Mhm.
You're gone to, you're in shutdown. You're just completely offline because you have used all of
Mhm.
your bank balance that day, and by the
Uh,
evening you're
and
wiped.
I think a good point as well is that these systems all have a place. It's not that we're not looking to regulate your nervous system, be a Zen master, and never feel these feelings or ignore them and and try just to get back into Zen. Because if you're being put in fight or flight, for example, because you are in a dangerous situation or something is going on in your life that needs your attention, you need to listen to that. I think sometimes the wellness industry can be like, oh no, we just need to block
Yeah,
all that out and get up to Zen. It's about reading and understanding that
yeah.
this is part of being a human, and they are serving you. But if you're stuck and the behavior that you're doing while you're stuck isn't serving you, then you need to work with that. Do you
Totally.
know?
Really, really important point, actually. It is not about bypassing hard times or
Hmm.
difficult, unwanted emotions. We also, at the same time, and again, this is another set of skills, is we need to be expanding our capacity
Hmm.
to feel uncomfortable, unwanted,
Yeah.
like, difficult sensations in the body, difficult
Yeah.
emotions.
And
Because,
tolerating what's intolerable to us at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like, as you said, Shauna, it's not going anywhere. I'm at a stage in my life now where I've got small kids, but I've got one older, I was only a child who's 21, no more than yourself. We've different ages and stuff and stages, but like, in 10 years, there'll be another set of
Oh, yeah.
things going on and demands of me, and hopefully in another 10 years after that there'll be
Yeah.
other things. Like, life is always going to be lifing, like life is always going to be bringing some stressors, and we want to learn how to cope with those, and feel, as you said, the messages that your body is sending. Like, often your body, when it's sending you messages like, no, no, not
Mhm.
today, my friend.
Mhm.
Or maybe a boundary has been crossed and your body is like, oh, that does not feel good. It will keep coming knocking at
Yeah.
your door until
Mhm.
eventually you listen. So that's why it's not all about doing all the deep breathing so that you never have to feel hard things, and that you can just kind of keep going. It is about listening to your body, and like, that's the work we do in our, certainly in
Mhm.
our healers, where like we dig into the deeper layers of like, what else could be going on here, what message could your body be
Mhm.
sending you right now.
And
So
with
there's
that
that.
message, then the good question to ask yourself is, well, what do I need in this moment? What do I need? Because you can be getting similar messages, throughout the day or in different days, but being able to ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? Because your needs might be different. So
Yeah.
it's not, and this is where then dieting is, here's the plan, follow the plan. We don't care what state you're going in or you're in. This is what you do. But actually, it's about, this is what's going on in my internal world. This is
Yeah.
what nervous system state, or where my dysregulation or regulation's at. And from that, I'm skilled at asking myself, what do I need, and getting my needs met from the feedback and the attunement of what is actually going on.
Yeah. And also, I suppose, just a final point, just to, on, sometimes we get asked about like weight. Well, we obviously get asked a lot about weight loss. If we're in a place of, if our system feels safe, and this is where we come back to like our healthy behaviors and the things that we do day to day that might serve us, when our system feels safe, if we are meant to be at a lower weight and our system feels safe, we're listening to our bodies, we're doing all those
Mm-hmm.
things, then we may lose weight, right? That
Mm-hmm.
can happen, and we don't necessarily celebrate that. We just celebrate the connection with how your body feels. It feels good and all that. But we know that this is why, when people are not alone, that they're starting off sometimes these diets in a sympathetic state, and they're in that activated place all the time because they're so frantic about wanting to lose weight, and that's kind of the drive and the
Yeah.
motivation. But we also want to touch on how smart your system is. That if you've had a history of chronic dieting and you've been on the 1800 calorie a day diets, or you've been on the ketos or the low carb or the Atkins or Slim and World or whatever it is, your system has coded, right, from
Mm-hmm.
those experiences for many, many years. Your system is so attuned to that restriction that every time you start a new diet and you've gone a day where you're like trying to consume, way under the calories and energy that your body requires, it further activates a stress response.
That's
So
right.
this is why the diet itself that you're on is also resulting in nervous system dysregulation, right?
Yeah.
It's complicating
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
really, really important to know, that that's how clever your system is. You can't just
Mm-hmm.
think your way out of that,
And if we
right?
think about set point theory, which is the point where your body feels safest at, your body will find its way to its whatever that may be in terms of your set point when it's about safety.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
isn't it? It's about, feeling safe to be there,
Because
whatever that is.
if your body is perceiving whatever it is that you're doing
Yeah.
as a threat, it is not going to let go of what it needs to survive. It needs
Yeah.
fat to survive, right? It's not going to let go of anything if it feels under threat. It needs that to keep going. So yeah, it's so, there's so much in it.
Hmm.
But I think that ultimately the message I would like people to know is that if you are struggling with unwanted behaviors around food, and you're maybe eating in a way that doesn't feel good, you're maybe your mind is full of thoughts and stress about food and guilt and all of these things that are definitely activating your nervous system, by the way. But you need to understand, this is not about just going to find another food plan. This is not about going to start a new set of food rules for yourself. That's not going to make any difference. You'll still circle back to the same place that you were
Mm-hmm.
in. You have got to do the work on getting to know how your own unique nervous system works. Learn how to map and become aware of your own nervous system. Dig into your beliefs. There's so much that we need to do to establish that safety in our body so we can begin to get going with healing that relationship with food. And then
Yeah.
that's when we bring in obviously all of our intuitive eating principles and all of the other skills and practices that we use to do the work around healing our relationship with food. So we can learn to eat in a way that feels good, that we can actually realize that, oh my God, I can listen to my body. My body is going to tell me what it is that it needs.
Yeah.
And I can listen to
I
what
trust it.
tastes good. I can trust it.
Mm-hmm.
And we all deserve that. And I want to remind people is that you are born with that. You were born with that skill.
Mm-hmm.
The minute you came out of the womb, whatever way you came out, you were wired to know that how to access food. You knew when to pull away when you were full. You knew to cry to get more. You have that wisdom. Just somewhere along the way that was disrupted
Just
and
regulate it.
dysregulated, and we can
Help
do the work
regulate it. Yeah.
to reconnect that. So obviously, if anybody is interested, we do have a full nervous system workshop that dives into the full nervous system and how it operates and all the rest of it. This is just a very light touch, but we think it's really, really important work and that people do need to be aware of this. And of course, if there's anybody interested in joining us for our more intensive course, this is where we work really, really closely with you for 16 weeks. That's starting in the middle of September. So for anybody that is maybe thinking, my relationship with food is terrible and I've been doing nothing about it for the last few years, only feeling more and more stressed about it. I always think, look, is the time right now? Right now? Well, we don't know. Let's talk that out. But I always say, is there ever a perfect time? Is there a
Yeah.
perfect time to do this work? Probably not. There'll always be some other thing that you could spend your money, your time, and your energy on. But also, what would you be set to benefit? How would you benefit
Mm-hmm.
from doing this work? How might it benefit not just you, but maybe people in your life, your partner, your family, maybe your children, and obviously ultimately yourself? But how would you be set to benefit if you had a really peaceful, connected relationship with food and your body?
And your
So we
body.
start in
Mm-hmm.
September and we finish up. We work with you right throughout Christmas and into the new year, into the end of January. So this cohort is going to be really interesting because it'll be the first time we've kind of got that one group right throughout
Right
Christmas and
through.
into the new year.
Yeah. The whole way.
And it's obviously like such a difficult time for people. I think that at Christmas, a lot of really, uh, you know, chaotic behaviors emerge at Christmas time because people are often dieting in the lead up to it, and saving themselves and saving their appetite in the lead up to it, and then everything goes mad, and then they're thinking about the new year and restricting. So we are going to be supporting people that this year it's going to be very
Mm-hmm.
different. Christmas and New Year are going to look very different this year for those of you that are going to be joining us.
Absolutely. 100%. So thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
That is it for the nervous system.